The enemy trap. The sound of metal creaked. A drop of water hit the ground. Human soldier Rin Varric opened his eyes slowly. His head hurt. Everything around him was strange. The walls were smooth and silver. No windows, no door, just a single light above. He sat up quickly. Where am I?" he whispered. Suddenly, he froze. Across the room, someone was watching him. It was not human. A tall girl with glowing blue skin and white eyes stood against the far wall. Her silver hair flowed down to her back. She wore a royal robe with strange alien symbols. Rin's heart jumped. An alien. He reached for his gun. It was gone. His helmet was gone too. Just his uniform remained. He was trapped. The girl didn't move. She stared at him without blinking. Rin stood slowly, keeping his hands up. "I'm not gonna hurt you, okay?" The alien girl didn't understand his words, but she narrowed her eyes. She didn't trust him. Rin pointed to himself. "Rin," he said slowly. Then he pointed to her. "You?" The girl said nothing. Her lips stayed shut. Suddenly, a robotic voice echoed through the room. "Warning. Bunker sealed. 2 life forms detected. Must cooperate to survive." Both Rin and the girl looked up in shock. "Cooperate?" Rin whispered. "What the hell does that mean?" The girl finally spoke. Her voice was soft but cold. "Trarvek Shalna," she said. Rin didn't understand her language, but her eyes told him. She thought he was the enemy. He backed away slowly and sat near one corner. She stayed in her corner too. The room was silent again. Only their breathing could be heard. Hours passed. No one spoke. No one moved. Then Rin saw something strange. The alien girl opened a small part of her sleeve. Inside, she had hidden a small, sharp blade. She looked at Rin. Her hand moved toward the blade. Rin stood quickly. Whoa, wait," he said. He didn't want to fight. She raised the blade, but not at him. She stabbed the wall behind her. Sparks flew. She was trying to escape. Rin walked toward her slowly. "Hey, stop. That's not gonna work." The girl turned and pointed the blade at his chest. Rin stopped. His hands went up again. The robotic voice returned. "Warning. Violence detected. Oxygen level decreasing. Cooperation is required." Both of them froze. They looked up. A red light was flashing now. The room was losing air. Rin sighed and sat down. "We're gonna die if we don't work together." He picked up a piece of metal from the floor and drew a simple stick figure of himself on the wall. Then, beside it, he drew another stick figure with a glowing head, like her. The alien girl stared at it. She slowly walked forward. Her eyes moved from the drawing to Rin's face. She bent down and added a sun and food beside the figures. Rin smiled a little. "Okay, I think we're getting somewhere." He touched his chest again. "Rin." She looked at him, then touched her own chest. "Sira." Rin's eyes widened. "Sira, you're a princess, aren't you?" Sira didn't reply, but her face showed a little surprise. He had guessed correctly. Rin stood up and offered her half a protein bar he had in his pocket. She looked at it with suspicion, then slowly took it. Their hands touched, just for a second. But something changed. Not hate, not fear, just silence. Understanding. They both sat near the wall now, watching the red light blink above. Enemies yesterday. Prisoners today. Maybe something else tomorrow. As Rin closed his eyes to rest, Sira looked at him quietly. Then, without sound, she pulled the blade from her sleeve again and pointed it toward him in the dark. The cold divide. The room was colder than before. Rin Varric woke up slowly, blinking at the red light still flashing above. His head ached, and his back was sore from sleeping on the hard floor. He stretched, groaned softly, then looked around. His eyes stopped on her. "Sira." The alien princess, still sitting in her corner, still holding the sharp blade in her hand. But she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the wall. Not just looking, drawing. Rin stood carefully and walked closer. He didn't want to scare her. Sira noticed, but didn't move. She just kept carving soft lines into the metal wall with her blade. Rin finally saw it. It was a drawing of two people, one human, one alien, holding hands. Above them, she had drawn a cracked moon and falling stars. He frowned. "What is that?" Sira looked up at him, eyes calm. She pointed at the drawing, then at the ceiling. "Veltren," she said. Rin guessed. "Veltren, is that your planet?" She nodded. Then her voice softened, broken. Rin's chest tightened. She wasn't just drawing. She was remembering. Sira pointed at the drawing of the cracked moon again and whispered, "Boom. War. Fire." Then she pointed at her chest. "Me. Hide." Rin understood now. She had lost something too. Maybe everything. For a moment, they stood there, not as enemies, not as soldiers, just two people trapped far away from home. But the peace didn't last long. A loud beep came from the wall. Another voice echoed in the room. "Oxygen at 68%. Rations remaining. 2. Rin looked at Sira, then at his own pocket. He had one protein bar left. She had one glowing blue capsule, probably food from her world. They looked at each other. Rin smiled and handed her the bar. Sira stared at it, then slowly held out her capsule. They exchanged food silently. But the taste was awful. Rin almost gagged on the alien capsule. It felt like jelly and fire in his mouth. Sira bit the protein bar and winced. Her glowing skin flickered for a second, like it didn't like the human food. Rin laughed softly. "Guess we're not built the same." But Sira didn't laugh. She turned away, gripping her arms tightly. Her body began shaking. "Hey," Rin said, walking toward her. "What's wrong?" She didn't reply. Then he saw it. Her hands. They were glowing red, burning. The human food was hurting her body. Damn it. Rin panicked. He searched his uniform for anything that could help. He pulled out a cloth and wrapped her hands gently. Sira flinched but didn't pull away. He looked at her face. Tears were falling from her eyes. She wasn't just in pain. She was ashamed. "Hey, it's okay," Rin whispered. "I didn't know. I'm sorry." For the first time, Sira looked into his eyes without anger or fear, just silence. She reached up and touched her chest again. "Sira." Rin smiled. "Yeah, I remember." "Sira." She pointed at him. "Rin." They nodded at each other. That moment was small, but it felt like a wall had cracked between them. Later that day, Rin used wires from a broken console to build a tiny fire heater. The room got a little warmer. He placed it between them. Now they sat closer, sharing the heat. Sira watched him with curiosity. "You fix?" she asked slowly. Rin nodded. "Engineer. Fix everything, except this mess." Sira tilted her head. "Human. Funny." He raised an eyebrow. "That your first joke?" She smiled, just a little, but it was the first time. Time passed. Rin showed her how to make small paper figures from scraps. He folded one into a little soldier and gave it to her. Sira held it gently. Her eyes sparkled. She pointed to it and whispered, "Friend." That word hit Rin hard. "Friend?" From an alien princess. Before he could answer, a strange buzzing noise came from the wall. A screen flickered on. It showed a broken hallway, filled with smoke. It was outside the bunker. Someone was trying to get in. Or worse, something. The robotic voice returned. "Structural damage detected. Infiltration possible. Caution advised." Rin stood up quickly and grabbed a metal pipe. Sira readied her blade. Footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Then, silence. Then, a loud bang. Rin grabbed Sarah's hand. "We need to stay quiet." They hid in the shadows as the door controls sparked. A clogged shadow moved under the door crack. Sarah whispered in fear, "Not human. Not Beltran. Monster." Rin's grip tightened. Whatever was outside, it wasn't from either of their worlds. It was something worse. The lights flickered. Sarah held Rin's hand tighter now. Her blade trembled. 2 enemies. 1 small room. 1 monster outside. And something new, something fragile, was starting between them. Not hate. Not fear. But a strange, quiet feeling. Something warm. The language of touch. Darkness. Not total, but enough. The lights inside the bunker were dim now, flickering like they were breathing their last. Rin Varric sat with his back against the cold wall, holding a metal pipe close to his chest. His eyes didn't leave the sealed door. That same shadow. It had passed again. Twice. Whatever was outside, they both knew. It was not human, and not Beltran. It was something else. Something wild. Something hungry. Sarah sat across from him, legs folded, arms wrapped around herself. Her glowing skin had dulled, her energy low. Even the marks on her arms, once bright like stars, now pulsed faintly. She hadn't spoken for hours. Rin glanced at her. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" She blinked slowly, then nodded. But he could tell. It was a lie. The bunker wasn't just testing their strength. It was testing their minds. Then, a small sound broke the silence. Thump. Thump. It was not the door. It was coming from inside the wall. Rin jumped to his feet. Sarah grabbed her blade. They looked at each other with the same thought. Is it already inside? Rin leaned his ear to the wall. Nothing. He banged once with the pipe. Thump. A reply, exactly the same. His throat went dry. "It's copying us," he whispered. Sarah stood close to him now, her breath fast. She pointed to the ceiling. Air. Falling. The oxygen level. It was getting worse. The robotic voice came again. Oxygen 49%. Warning. Life support critical. Cooperation still required. Cooperation, Rin muttered. "We've been doing that. What more do you want from us?" He slammed the pipe on the floor. Sarah flinched. He turned. "Sorry. I don't want to die here, Sarah. Not like this." Sarah looked at him carefully. Then she walked over, knelt beside him, and did something she had never done before. She reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were soft and warm, surprising for someone whose body shimmered like ice. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Safe. You make safe." Rin felt something inside him shift. This wasn't just survival anymore. They were beginning to trust. No translator, no real shared language. But now they were speaking with hands, with eyes, with touch. Later that night, Rin couldn't sleep, not because of fear, but because of memories. He sat near the tiny heater, watching Sarah sleep curled in the corner. He remembered his younger sister, Allah, who died when an alien ship hit their town. She was just 10, sweet, bright, loved to sing. He used to blame every alien for her death. Even now, deep down, some part of him still did. But as he looked at Sarah, her soft breathing, her peaceful face, he didn't feel hate. He felt confusion and warmth. He reached into his jacket and pulled out something small, an old music chip. It didn't have much power left, but he activated it. A quiet human song began to play. Soft guitar, slow voice, words Sarah didn't understand, but the feeling, the emotion, it made her stir. Her eyes opened. She listened. Then she sat beside him. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Sarah whispered, "Music, heart language." Rin looked at her. "Yeah, That's a good way to say it. She pointed to his chest. You? Sad. He nodded. She placed her hand over her own heart. Me too. Rin turned the music louder. He stood up and held out his hand. Syrah looked confused. He smiled. It's called dancing. She raised an eyebrow. Dancing? He nodded. Trust me. Just follow. She slowly took his hand. They stood close, too close for enemies. Rin placed one hand on her waist, unsure if this was okay. Syrah didn't move away. Step by step, they moved, awkward, clumsy, but smiling. Syrah let out a quiet laugh. You, bad dancer. Rin laughed too. Yeah, well, you're not much better. They kept dancing in that small circle of light. Two souls from different worlds. No war, no weapons, just quiet music and human emotion. And then, boom, the entire room shook violently. The walls cracked. The heater tipped over. The lights flickered again. Sparks flew from the ceiling. They both hit the ground. Earthquake. Rin gasped. Syrah looked at the wall. No, not quake. Attack. She was right. The robotic voice blared louder than ever before. Hostile life form has breached outer corridor. Defense system offline. Seek shelter. Final warning. Final. The word felt cold. Syrah stood up and looked around. Hide. Where? There was nowhere. No extra room. No trapdoor. Just this single metal cell. Rin grabbed her hand. Then we fight. Syrah looked at him. Not just with fear. With something deeper. She reached up and traced a small glowing mark on her arm. It spread across her skin like a tattoo, markings of her royal family. She pointed at Rin and said, I give you my word. I protect. He nodded. Me too. Then they stood side by side, his metal pipe and her glowing blade, facing the door together. It began to open slowly. Smoke poured in. A low growl echoed through the hallway. And in that moment, Rin didn't care about the war or about being human. He only cared about protecting Syrah, the enemy. It was no longer her. Heartbeats. Smoke filled the small room. The heavy metal door groaned as it opened an inch, then stopped. Something, or someone, was blocking it from the other side. Rin Varric gripped his metal pipe tightly. His knuckles turned white. Beside him, Princess Syrah's glowing blade hummed in the dark. Her blue skin flickered with nervous energy. They stood shoulder to shoulder. One heartbeat. Two people, facing the unknown. A shadow moved in the smoke. Long. Thin. Wrong. It dragged across the floor like it didn't belong to this world. Syrah whispered, Not from my stars. Not from yours. Rin didn't answer. He couldn't. His breath caught in his throat. The lights above sparked, then burst. Darkness swallowed them. Then, silence. The smoke stopped moving. The door stopped opening. The shadow disappeared. Gone. Just like that. Rin and Syrah didn't speak for a long time. They just stood there, listening. The silence was louder than any scream. Finally, Syrah lowered her blade. It left, she said. For now. Rin let out a slow breath. What was that? Syrah shook her head. Old enemy. From deep space. My people call it Seneth. It eats minds. Leaves body. Empty. Rin shivered. And it knows we're here. She nodded. Yes, it can smell fear. They sat down against the wall again, hearts still racing. The air was thin now. Every breath felt like breathing through cloth. Oxygen 38%. 2 life forms remaining. The robotic voice felt more like a death clock now. Suddenly, Rin laughed, a small, hopeless laugh. Syrah tilted her head. Why you laugh? Rin leaned back. Because I just realized, if we die in here, no one will ever know we existed. No one will know that a human and an alien princess sat in the dark, side by side, waiting to die together. Sira thought about that. Then she smiled softly. Then we tell the walls. Rin looked at her. What? She pointed to the metal wall. Draw stories. Our names. Our hearts. He stared, then slowly smiled. He grabbed the broken wire and began to draw. He drew himself, stick figure with messy hair. Then he drew Sira, glowing skin, sharp eyes, crown over her head. Then he drew a monster. Then, a small fire between them. He looked at her. Your turn. Sira took the wire, gently touched the wall, and began carving. Her drawings were cleaner, beautiful. She drew a broken moon, a little girl sitting under it alone. Then, a human boy offering her light. When she finished, Rin whispered, "That's me." She nodded. "You gave me light, even in dark." He didn't know what to say, so he reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Her fingers were warm. The soft glow of her skin touched his arm. For the first time, Rin felt his heartbeat slow, not from fear, but something else, something gentle. Later, they sat close beside the small heater. It barely worked now, but the light it gave was soft and golden. Sira leaned her head on Rin's shoulder. She looked up at him and whispered, "You sing." Rin blinked. "What?" "You said, music is heart language. I want to hear your heart." He chuckled. "I'm a terrible singer." She smiled. "Good. So am I." Rin sighed. Then, quietly, he began to hum a song his sister used to sing to him at night, a soft lullaby. Slow, simple words. "Close your eyes, little star. Even far, I know where you are. Hold my hand in the dark. We'll find home, heart to heart." Sira closed her eyes. Her fingers tightened around his. Tears slipped down her cheeks. After a long pause, she whispered, "We never sang as children. My people do not show hearts, only power." Rin looked at her. "You're showing heart now." She didn't answer, just leaned closer. Hours passed. Then something unexpected happened. The screen on the wall flickered again. But this time, it didn't show smoke. It showed a face. Rin jumped up. "Commander Tylan," he gasped. It was a human commander. Someone from Earth Command. He was alive and sending a signal. "Rin Varric, do you copy? If you're alive, respond. We are 6.3 kilometers from your location. We're seeing signs of movement in the ruins. Hostiles present. Respond. Soldier." Rin ran to the speaker. "This is Varric. I'm alive. I'm inside a sealed bunker. Not alone. Repeat, not alone. Alien princess with me. She's not a threat. We're cooperating. We need air and evac." Static. Then the screen went dark again. Rin looked at Sira. "They're close. They might come." Sira didn't look happy. She looked afraid. "If your people come," she whispered, "they take me, use me, hurt me." Rin shook his head. "I won't let that happen." She looked at him, eyes wide, heart open. "You protect me?" she asked. He stepped closer. "With my life." Then he added softly, "I think I'd already die for you, Sira." Her lips parted. "I don't understand that feeling." Rin touched her cheek. "It's called love." She blinked. "We do not have that word. We say shared fire." He smiled. "I like that better." She touched his chest. Then she whispered, "Rin, I feel your fire." And for the first time in both their lives, they kissed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The kind of kiss that didn't belong in a war. The kind that said, even if we die here, we found something worth living for. The betrayal signal. The air felt heavy now, like every breath cost something. The tiny heater in the corner had died. The blinking red light above the door no longer blinked. It just glowed. Constant. Watching. Waiting. Rin Varric sat quietly beside Princess Sura, their backs against the cold bunker wall. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was warm, like the silence after a song you didn't want to end. But outside the bunker, the world was still dangerous. The Sineth creature, whatever it was, hadn't returned yet. But Rin felt it. The pressure in his skull. The soundless hum in the walls. It was near. Too near. Oxygen 31%. Warning. Critical level. Evacuation required. The robotic voice reminded them again. Rin tapped his wrist communicator. It had finally begun working after some repairs. Still glitchy, still unstable, but it worked. For now. He turned to Sura. If we're lucky, my team might find us in time. Sura didn't look hopeful. She held her knees to her chest. Your people find me. They will not let me live. I am royal blood. I am. Enemy. Rin sighed. Not to me. She touched her chest slowly. You see me. Not as war. As person. He smiled. Exactly. But then, the communicator buzzed. A light blinked. A signal had been sent. Rin frowned. I didn't send that. He looked at the screen. Message sent. Coordinates broadcasted. His heart dropped. What? He whispered. How? He stood up and checked the device. It wasn't malfunctioning. The signal had been manually triggered. He looked over at Sura. She was standing now, too. Did you touch this? Rin asked gently, trying not to accuse. Syra's face went blank. I'd not know. Rin stepped forward. You had it. Earlier. You were trying to fix it too. Did you send the signal? Sura looked down. Yes. Rin's throat went dry. Why? She didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, I sent to my people. The words stabbed him. Rin turned away. His hands shook. You lied to me. I did not lie, Sura said. I did not say all truth. He laughed bitterly. That's the same thing. She stepped forward. You said your people close. But I also need help. I am not soldier. I am daughter. I want to live. You sent our location to the enemy. Rin snapped. She flinched. Your people, my people, both want us dead. I only want escape. Silence. Long. Cold. Rin sat back down and buried his face in his hands. He didn't know if it was betrayal or just desperation. Maybe both. After minutes passed, he finally said, They could come here. Right now. And if they see me next to you. Syra's voice cracked. They will kill you. He nodded. She whispered, Then I die too. He looked up. What? I told them. Come alone, she said. No weapons, or I warn Earth Command. I used your signal to contact both sides. You contacted both. She nodded slowly. I don't want to choose sides, she said. I want peace. He stared at her, heart pounding. She had used the signal, but not to escape alone. She had used it to force peace. A message blinked on the wrist comm. Veltran scout ship inbound, 14 minutes. Earth recovery drone inbound, 12 minutes. They were both coming. At the same time, Rin and Sura packed what little they had. They found a crack in the far wall, wide enough for a person to squeeze through. The outside hallway was unstable. The floor shook. Sparks flew from hanging wires. The sound of distant metal footsteps echoed. The Sneth was awake again. We don't have time, Rin said. Sura grabbed his hand. Then we run. They moved through the hallway together, ducking under fallen beams, avoiding puddles of glowing green liquid. The air was thinner out here. Rin coughed. Sura stumbled, but they didn't stop. Then, boom, the roof cracked above them. A large piece of steel fell. Rin saw it coming. He shoved Sira forward. The steel hit his side hard. He dropped to the floor with a scream. "Rin!" Sira cried out, rushing back to him. He clutched his ribs. Pain. Burning pain. "Keep going," he said. "Go." "No," she said firmly. "We stay together." She pulled him up, arm over her shoulder, and they kept walking. More sounds echoed behind them. Screeches. Clicking. Scraping. The Sneth was coming. At last, they reached a broken exit hatch, part of the upper tunnel. Outside was sky. Real sky. The color of deep green and silver clouds. A drone hovered above. Earth's recovery drone. On the other side, a sleek alien ship landed gently. Veltrin's scout vessel. Both doors opened. Both sides stepped out and saw them. Rin and Sira stood together at the exit, bloody, weak but alive. Her arm around him, his hand on hers. A voice shouted from the Earth side. "Soldier, step away from the alien." Another voice from the Veltran ship. "Princess, come here now. He is using you." Guns pointed. Commands yelled. Tension built. Rin raised his voice. "Wait, don't shoot." Sira did the same. "Peace, please." Then, a low scream shook the ground. The Sneth was in the tunnel now. Everyone turned. The creature appeared, long, tall, black as oil, with no face. No eyes, just teeth and tendrils. Both Earth and Veltran soldiers opened fire. It did nothing. Then, it leaped. Straight toward Rin and Sira. They didn't move. They just held each other tighter. And in that moment, a blast of light came down from the sky. A third ship. Unknown. Unmarked. It fired one glowing orb. The creature screamed, then vanished, burned into ash. Everyone stood frozen. Rin looked up. "What ship is that?" Sira shook her head. "I do not know." Then the mysterious ship turned and left. No message, no signal, just silence. The war wasn't over, but something bigger had just entered the galaxy. Smoke floated over the battlefield. But this was no ordinary battlefield. No bullets flying, no bombs dropping, just silence, and two groups of soldiers pointing weapons at two people standing between them. Rin Varric, human soldier. Sira Velen, alien princess. Their arms were locked around each other like a living shield. Behind them lay the burned remains of this Sneth creature, the thing that haunted the tunnels. It was gone now, destroyed by the unknown third ship that had appeared, saved them, then vanished without a word. But that didn't bring peace. Not here. Not now. "Step away from her, Varric," barked Commander Tylan, his voice sharp and full of disbelief. "You've been compromised." Rin's breathing was heavy. Blood ran down his arm. His ribs screamed in pain, but he held Sira tighter. "I'm not compromised," he shouted. "I'm awake." For the first time. Across from him, a voice rang from the Veltran side. "Princess Sira, return at once. You shame your house by standing with the enemy." Sira's face didn't change. She kept her chin high. "This man saved me. He fought beside me. He showed me kindness. He is human," the alien general roared. "He is your sworn enemy." Sira turned to Rin and whispered, "They do not want truth. They want war." He nodded. "We can't give it to them." Rin stepped forward, hands raised. "Listen to me. The thing we killed, it wasn't from Earth. And it wasn't from Veltran. It was something else. And it's not alone." No response. No lowered weapons. Just eyes filled with fear, suspicion, hate. Sira tried next. "My father rules Veltran with fear, but I have seen another way. This human is not a monster. He is light in the dark." Some of the younger alien soldiers looked uncertain now. They glanced at each other. Their eyes flickered between the commander and the princess. Doubt. That's all it took. Commander Tylan saw it too. He stepped forward, furious. You've fallen for her lies, Varric. You're thinking with your heart, not your orders. I've seen the enemy, Rin said calmly. It's not her. It's what we become when we stop listening. Just then, a second Earth ship landed. Heavier, larger, black-armored humans stepped out. From them walked a man with silver stripes on his chest. Admiral Kears, highest-ranking officer in this sector. He walked slowly, cold eyes scanning the scene. "Where is the alien?" he asked. Commander Tylan pointed. "There, with Varric. There, together." Kears turned to Rin. "Soldier, is this true?" Rin didn't blink. "Yes, sir." The Admiral narrowed his eyes. "Then you leave me no choice." He nodded to the guards. "Detain him. Kill the alien." "No," Rin shouted, stepping in front of Sira. Weapons raised again. Everything moved too fast. A Veltran soldier screamed, "You touch our princess, we fire." Both sides locked eyes. One wrong move, and war would start again. Sira stepped forward now, pushing Rin gently behind her. Her voice rang out. "Then shoot me first." The soldiers froze. The general on the Veltran side lowered his weapon, stunned. "You would die for him?" he asked. Sira nodded. "Yes, he taught me what our leaders never could." "Which is?" She looked back at Rin, then turned to the armies. "That power is not fear. Power is love. Love that does not ask for blood. Love that protects, even in pain." Silence. Then a voice from the Earth side whispered, "She's not what they told us." Another voice from Veltran's line, "She could have escaped. She didn't." The soldiers began to lower their guns, all except Admiral Kears. He raised his pistol, aimed it right at Rin. "I'll fix this myself," he growled. "We do not make peace with enemies." Sira screamed, "No." But the shot fired. Time slowed. Sira jumped in front of Rin. The bullet hit, but didn't strike flesh. Instead, a glowing blue shield formed around them. The shot bounced off and sizzled in the air. Everyone stared in shock. Rin looked up. "What was that?" Sira's eyes widened. "The mark, from my arm." It responded to danger. Suddenly, the blue glow spread, around her, around Rin. Then a holographic image appeared in the air. It was the third ship, the unknown one. A voice echoed, not male, not female. Calm, smooth. "You have proven yourselves. Unity under fire, compassion over command, protection without blood. You are ready." Everyone stood frozen. The voice continued. "This galaxy will fall unless it changes, and change begins with two." The blue light faded. The voice was gone, but the message burned in every mind. Sira stepped forward again. "You heard it. Not from my people, not from his, but something greater." She pointed at Rin. "We are not enemies. We are the first step." The silence that followed wasn't filled with fear. It was filled with hope. Admiral Kears turned away, angry, ashamed. He knew he had lost control. The Veltran general knelt slowly. "We follow. Our princess." Sira held out her hand to Rin. He took it, and in that moment, two armies watched something impossible happen. A human and an alien princess stood together, not as captives, not as traitors, but as leaders of something new, something dangerous, something beautiful. Peace. Love in between worlds. 2 weeks later, the war had not ended, but it had stopped for the first time in years. All across the galaxy, weapons were lowered, ships stood still in orbit, and leaders held emergency meetings on every planet, because of two names now whispered across space. Rin Varric, Sira Velen, the human soldier and the alien princess. Enemies by birth, allies by accident, soulmates by choice. Inside the floating Unity station, Built in secret orbit between Earth and Veltran space, Rin stood near a glass window, watching the stars. He still wore parts of his Earth uniform, scuffed, burned, patched. But around his neck hung a glowing thread of light, a gift from Sira. Behind him, the large meeting hall buzzed with tension. 2 long tables, one for humans, one for Gultrans. Diplomats, generals, admirals, advisors. They all waited. At the center of the room, one single chair remained empty. It was meant for Sira. "She's late," a human officer muttered. "She won't come," whispered an alien general. "She's changed too much." Rin said nothing. He just waited. Then the doors opened, and Sira entered, but not in her royal robe, not in armor. She wore a simple white garment, glowing softly with her natural light. The alien general stood. Even the humans straightened. She walked forward with grace, but not pride, not fear, just truth. Sira looked at both sides and said clearly, "We cannot rewrite history, but we can write what comes next." She walked to Rin, stood beside him, and held out her hand. Rin took it without hesitation. A flash of cameras followed, not for media, not for news, but for records, so that future generations would believe this moment truly happened. Later that night, Rin and Sira sat alone on the upper deck of the station. Just them and the stars. "Was I late?" she asked softly. "You always arrive right when you're needed," Rin replied with a smile. They sat in silence. Then Sira spoke again. "They don't fully trust me." "They don't fully trust me either," Rin said. "They think I've become human," she added. "And they think I've become alien," he chuckled. She looked at him. "Maybe we've become more." He turned to her, eyes warm. "More is a good word." They watched a shooting star pass. It wasn't a star. It was a returning scout ship. But it felt like something magical. "I had dreams when I was a child," Sira whispered, "but none like this." "What did you dream?" Rin asked. She smiled. "I dreamed of silence, of walking alone. No war, no expectations, just peace. And now," she looked at him, "now I dream of us, of a place where no one has to hide who they love." Rin's hand reached for hers. "Let's build that place, together." Over the next few months, Unity Station became more than metal and glass. It became a symbol. The first ship with mixed crews, humans and Veltrans serving together. Shared meals, shared missions, shared music. And at the center of it all, Rin and Sira. They didn't take political titles. They didn't call themselves heroes. They just kept showing up, talking, listening, helping, one heart at a time. In one mission, they stopped a rogue satellite that was firing at both sides. In another, they rescued a group of hybrid orphans, children born from war, rejected by both species. Sira adopted one of them, a little girl named Thay, blue eyes like the sky, and laughter like wind chimes. Rin taught Thay to draw stars. Sira taught her to speak both languages. She became their daughter, not by blood, but by love. One night, Rin stood in front of a mirror, fixing his jacket. Sira stepped in behind him, quiet. He looked at her reflection. "You ready?" She nodded. "Always. Where are we going again?" He smiled. "Just a quiet hill, with some lights in the sky." They arrived at a garden on the edge of the station. Plants from both worlds. Flowers that glowed at night. A fake breeze, made by air vents. Rin pulled out something from his pocket. A small silver ring. Not gold, not traditional, but his. He took her hand. "There's no priest here, no royal elder, just me, and you, and the stars." Sira's eyes sparkled. "Perfect." He slid the ring onto her finger. It changed color, glowing with her touch. She placed her palm on his chest and whispered, "You carry my fire." Rin kissed her forehead, then her lips. Then the world faded away. 1 year later, 2 children ran through the Unity Station halls, one with human brown hair, the other with blue glowing skin. Laughter echoed. Behind them walked 2 parents. One human, one alien. Not kings, not rulers. Just Rin and Sira, hand in hand. Back on Earth, and deep inside Veltrin's capital, people still whispered. Some still hated. Some still doubted. But the younger ones, they wore little badges with the letters R+S. They drew stick figures holding hands. They believed. Because someone somewhere had to go first. Rin once said, "Even if we die here, we found something worth living for." He was wrong. They didn't just find it. They created it. Together. In a room built for war, they planted the first seed of peace. And it grew. Between 2 worlds. Between 2 hearts. Forever.